recollection of this? Can they compare and contrast? Because certainly adults do. And that comparative ability is really important. That dual frame of reference is very important to how they feel that they belong or do not belong in the new context. If you feel that you belong in your homeland, then you're constantly thinking back about the homeland and not so worried necessarily about integrating into the new cultural context. If you don't have any recollection, then you're going to just be oriented towards the new cultural context. And that's your focus. And so it's these second generation kids that are 1.5ers where they have some recollection, but they come at an age which is still, there's still a great deal of brain flexibility are very interesting to study. So we know now you have a great deal that infancy and early and mid-childhood, where if a child comes at this time, that they're going through total integration, that the children are learning these categories, social categories, that the categories have boundaries, the kids are doing boundary work, they're finding their cultural comforts, and a child coming in at this very early age, infancy, early to middle childhood, is going to be able to acquire multiple competencies as long as he or she is exposed to them all, okay? Because you have to do culture. You can't just be exposed to it. You have to do culture, not just have culture. It's not a possession. Later childhood and adolescent now, the brain is being reorganized, these synapse connections, all that kind of stuff is taking place. And so there are periods of innovation that take place in this period of time. But there's also, and there's also that thing about trying to be distinctive going on in late childhood and early adolescence. You've learned the social rules, the social categories, and now you're really trying to negotiate your social status within them. And so this is where you often see that those that invent, the most inventive time of life is in adolescence and early adulthood. Your brain is still somewhat flexible, and you're also really interested in trying to locate yourself socially. And so you're trying to do things that make you distinctive. You're fitting in, but you also want to do something distinctive. And then, under this scheme now, through looking at enculturation as well as acculturation, we realize that in adults, we're typically avoiding cultural discomforts. We feel overwhelmed by the new cultural context if we're an immigrant coming into it. And so a lot of what we do is try to avoid too much overload, like those children with autism, so that we can go on and do the things that we have to do. We have to work, we have to pay bills, we have to do this, we have to do that. But we still have the ability to learn, it's just more difficult. And so, adults, as, what was your name?
David.
David is talking about learning a new language. It's more painful. It's just really more painful, right? Much more difficult. And now we have a better understanding of the brain science behind why it's more difficult. So I think that there's a great application of all of this knowledge, to working with immigrants in the first 1.5 and second generation. So these are some of my applications, which is that when you're working with immigrants, we need to develop developmentally appropriate integration strategies. Young children are really organized around the need for order and predictability and having a sense of comfort. They really need comfort. The children in the late childhood or middle, adolescence need safe spaces, new categories for them to be able to experiment in. And in adults, we all need to be encouraged to flex our cultural muscles.